Hello guys, Rich back on the channel that is all filler and no killer. Today I I'm going to attempt to do my first review of a perfume, and I have chosen one that is one of my favorites. Over the past few weeks I've been releasing like videos of like lists and like unboxings and stuff because they're like fairly like easy to do. And it sort of goes with my style where I just sort of sit down and start talking. I haven't taken any notes. I haven't done any preparation, but this review is of one of my favorite perfumes and one which I've worn a lot of and that I love and I know really well. I think I am more comfortable without notes. Strangely, if it's something I know what I'm talking about, I just feel like I find it easier just to turn the camera on and start talking. So I'm going to give it a go. And today we have Francesco Smalto, Homme. You will have almost certainly heard me talking about this fragrance at some point if you have ever heard of me before. There's no reason for you to have, but if you've ever encountered me in any media form at all on this app, then you will know that I love this perfume. If I was to make a top 10, this would be fairly near the top of my all-time favourite perfumes. Fortunately, I don't actually have to make a top 10 of my favourite perfumes, so I'm not going to do that, possibly ever, hopefully ever, because while top 10s are good, to make of your favourites, the problem with that would be I would change my mind as soon as I stop recording. Very difficult. I've got like a clutch of perfumes that I love the most, and then I would have like a different criteria for perfumes that I wore the most of, all these sorts of things. But anyway, I'm gonna try and review this. I've got the notes listed here, so I'll read them off to you first. The top notes are lavender, tarragon, rosemary, bergamot, anise, and neroli. The middle notes are Virginia cedar, fern, which doesn't have a smell. I'm sure that's what the whole idea of a fougere is anyway. Patchouli, carnation, cyclamen, geranium, and the base notes are leather, oak moss, musk, and tonka bean. I will tell you what I get the most of. So I get at the top, I get the rosemary, the anise, and the lavender. Not too sure what tarragon smells like by itself, but there we are. In the mid, I get the carnation and the cedar. And in the base, I get the leather and the oak moss. So I'll start at the beginning. When you first spray this on, the sprayer's not the best. I'll show a spray for you. Oh, God. So I'll show a spray. There we are. Wait. It's not the greatest spray in the world. This room's going to smell amazing now. It's not the greatest spray in the world. I was right. It does smell amazing. It's not the greatest spray in the world. If you would usually use three, say if you were using a Dior, you would only need 2 or 3 sprays. You could usually mark that up. If I was to use 2 or 3 sprays of a Dior perfume with their sprayers, using this spray, you would probably need to use about 5 or 6. It's not a bad sprayer, and there are bad sprayers out there, but it's not a great sprayer. The amount of liquid it puts out probably helps because it is very strong. It's a strong projector. It's a strong performer. The longevity, the sillage, all of that sort of thing. Performance overall is pretty great on this fragrance. You don't have to worry about anything like that, so don't go too heavy if you do have it. I'm sure you already know not to do that. As far as I was saying about the smell, off the top, I get the rosemary, the anise, and the lavender. The lavender is a big lasting note that lasts all the way to like the top of the base, if you know what I mean. It does die off in the end, but the lavender's there from the beginning all the way through the mid and then dies away towards the base. The anise the anise and the rosemary at the top. It sounds like a strange combination, but it just works. You can definitely pick up the anise. There's bergamot as well, and bergamot just sort of, you can do so much with bergamot, and it's in so many different perfumes that it's almost like ubiquitous. You sort of feel with bergamot that it's in everything, and it nearly is. And if you know what to smell for, you can smell it, but it sort of just gives it that. It sort of gives it that like lightness and like pureness at the top, rather than actually smelling like bergamot. The lavender and the anise for me are quite big. I don't get any of the tarragon, although it's meant to be a big note in it. And I don't get much neroli either. I'd say that's pretty negligible. So it starts with the lavender and the anise gives it this sort of strange spiciness. It's a little bit unusual, but it is an aromatic fougere, as you can probably tell by the notes, and the anise makes it a little bit different. And it gives it that difference, that strangeness that you like in a fragrance, because you don't want to smell the same as everyone else unless you do want to smell the same as everyone else, and then I'm not sure why you're here, because just why would you want to smell like everyone else? But going back to the lavender isn't like a Beau de Jour lavender. It's more of a, let's have a quick smell. The lavender is more of a, it's an old-fashioned lavender. It smells like, this is an old-fashioned like smell. It does smell like your dad. It does smell like a mustachioed man. It does have that early 90s, late 80s vibe where you would see men like, I often talk about it. The man from the Southern Comfort advert where he's just walking on the beach in his Speedos, and he's got a drink in his hand, and he's got a mustache, and he's got the old aviator sunglasses, a little bit of hair on his chest. That's what this type of fragrance is, and it does give that straight from the off as well. Also from the top, as I was saying before about the lavender, how the lavender stretches from the top to the top of the base. The oak moss from the base stretches up from the base to the bottom of the top. So after about 10-20 minutes, you start to get these impressions of like oak moss. It's sort of like, not sour, but like musty, almost like a musty sort of smell that you get from the old-fashioned oak moss fragrances, stuff like Quorum. That gives it that old-fashioned feel. Not a bad feel. It doesn't feel like it's old-fashioned, but it's like not out of date. I don't think it's out of date, because like I say, this is like a love for me, so I can't ever imagine like me not loving this. But I already, now I just sprayed it. When I sprayed it just before I came on, then I could already smell the oak moss, and that's what I'm starting to get now. It starts to take over. The oak moss for me is one of the biggest notes in the perfume. But we'll keep going as you come down through the top. You get into the mid, and for me, the mid is almost an afterthought. According to the notes on Fragrantica, at least, the mid notes are Virginia cedar, fern, patchouli, carnation, cyclamen, and geranium. For me, all I get from the mid is carnation and a little bit of geranium. I don't get the others at all. I don't get any patchouli. They must be supporting notes. They must be using those notes to bring out the other notes in the perfume, because I don't get any I mean, fern doesn't have a smell, so it's a ludicrous statement. Virginia cedar, I don't get. If anybody knows the difference between all the different kinds of cedars, let us know, because I haven't got a clue. I don't know what cyclamen smells like, personally. So that's a bit of a. I can't really comment, but what I get from the mid is a big carnation that also adds to the vintage feel of the fragrance. And it's starting to, for me, it almost goes through the mid. The mid's basically not there. And then it comes to the base, and in the base is a big leather note and a big oak moss note. I've already touched on the oak moss, but the oak moss, it's a beautiful fragrance. You just don't get oak mosses like this anymore. I once heard that Thierry Vassar at Guerlain had replaced an oak moss note. I think it was Mitsuko. But he'd found a way to replace it, and he'd used celery seed, which is quite clever. And it gave like a very similar vibe to the perfume and allowed it not to change. Guerlain's reformulations are usually really good, as are most houses who have got in-house perfumers. But that's not a problem in this fragrance. This fragrance came out in the early 90s or the late 80s. I'll have to check. It came out in 1987. So I believe the ban on oak moss came in 1990. Or the reduction, the first reduction in oak moss use came in 1990. So, and this smells like it. I'm not entirely. This is one of the first run. You can tell the first run of these of the Smalto Pour Homme, because on the lid it has the gold band, and on the later bottles it doesn't have a gold band. It has like just a rubber all the way down, and it doesn't have that gold band. So if you're looking for a proper vintage, get the one with the gold band around the lid. At the bottom, like I said, the oak moss, and the oak moss is huge, but probably the defining feature, it might not be the biggest note in the perfume for me, but probably the defining feature of the perfume is the leather. And Smalto is a Italian house, and Italian leather fragrances are usually smoky. And there's no smoke listed in the perfume, but this is definitely a smoky leather, and you can smell the smoke in the leather. Italian leather, smoky Italian leather perfume, and that's what this becomes. It's a bit like Tuscany per Uomo, in that it's got the lavender at the top. It dries, and it's some sort of like citrus and like freshness at the top, and it does smell fresh at the top, but not for long. It turns into a clean, smoky, real leather smell. But it goes through lavender to get there, and it goes through carnation to get there. And they add to the sort of sophistication, to the cleanness of the fragrance. I know it sounds strange saying that something's smoky and clean, but this manages to do it as a very complex fragrance. The transitions are beautiful, and it ends up at a place where the lavender's not really there anymore, but it's sort of got that, like, I don't want to use like a word like echo, but it's got like a memory of lavender. It's still there, but it's like you couldn't reach out and touch it. There's tonka and musk in the base apparently, but I don't get it. I don't get much sweetness from this at all, apart from, like, unless you consider lavender sweet. But I don't perceive it as being sweet in this fragrance. Overall, this gives a sophisticated, but you feel like you could wear this every day. If you dress it up, it would be very chic. On a woman, this would be very chic. Like, a lady could wear this. A lady could wear this if she was a badass. If she was a bad woman, if she was like a badass woman, she could wear this. A man could wear this, and you've got to have a little bit of edge to do it as well. People pleasing, this ain't. And the people who would wear this wouldn't be people pleasing for people either. So this is one of my favourite fragrances. And I would highly recommend you go out there and at least try it or get a sample. But don't buy all of it, because I would like to still buy a few more bottles. I've got a few, but I would like to have more. I'd try and find out who the perfumer was. I don't think it's listed. It's not listed. I don't know who it is, but it'll have been. This speaks to like a this is like a this represents a style of fragrance that's basically gone now. This is a niche fragrance. If this was released today, it wouldn't be by a designer house, which is what Smalto is. It would be released by a niche house, and people would be paying top whack for this because the blending's brilliant. The presentation's really good. I mean, it's dead interesting. It's got this like, it's rounded bottle. It feels very ergonomic, feels great in the hand. And it's easy to spray. And some bottles aren't easy to spray. I'm going to do a review of Encre Noir at some point, and that is just an absolute pig to try and spray. But yes, I think the presentation's nice. I'm not going to do the box because, fuck me, man. Who cares about the box? Unless it's an outrageous box. Don't care about the box. But yes, that's it. This is my first attempt at a review. Let me know if you've tried it. Let me know what you think. Let us know what you think about the review. And yes, thanks very much. Bye.